The Gauteng High Court continues to hear the case challenging the deadline for the switching off of the analogue signal. ETV, Media Monitoring Africa and SOS Coalition argue that the 31st of March cutoff could leave millions without TV access. Joining us now to discuss this is the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Malatsi. Minister, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Why is the government arguing that the 31st of March should be the switch-off date, even though the state itself says that there are around 370,000 households who have not yet switched to the digital and switched from analog to the set-top boxes?
Yeah. Good morning, Aldrin, and to your viewers. Thanks for the opportunity to be able to talk to you about this ongoing case. You are definitely right. The case has been had over the past 2 days, from the 18th to the 19th. Basically, it is a legal challenge that has been brought by e-media and those media NGOs, challenging the decision that as the 7th administration we took to proceed with analog switch off, and that deadline being the end of March this year. For some context, the initial deadline was supposed to be the end of December last year, and we motivated for an extension, and that extension which Cabinet offered and agreed to was for the end of March. The intention was then to use the period to be able to make efforts into meeting those registered beneficiaries to try and switch as many of them from analog into digital signal. The fact of the matter is that at the end of November last year, which is when the extension was granted, there were approximately around 430,000 registered beneficiaries who were still reliant on analog signal. And we then took the decision, taking into consideration two crucial factors. One is this project has been long-standing for some time, dating as far back as 2014. In addition to that, there is a financial cost to maintaining both analog and digital signal on, which in technical terms is called dual illumination. And the cost of that dual illumination, Aldrin, since 2014 has been over 1.2 million. And increasingly, the state does not have sufficient revenue to continue funding these two, maintaining these two signals. And the challenge is that the broadcasters in particular, as outlined in the affidavit of e-media, are advocating that the deadline is too soon, and they are arguing a different number of households who would be affected. And while that is their reasons, and as a law-abiding part of government, we welcome these court processes, because that's the right avenue to ventilate any differences that have legal implications. We are relying on the number of registered beneficiaries who are mostly indigent families that as government, we took the responsibility to assist. And in fact, we are required to assist in migrating them so that we can enhance universal access. And we have different views, one on the numbers that the broadcasters are articulating in terms of people who are still on analog, and secondly on the practical realities of the unaffordability given the lack of resources within the state.
Okay, let's then stick to the figures that the department are using. Is the department comfortable with having 370 households not being able to move to the digital, with the digital migration by the 31st of this month?
I think any number, Aldrin, would never be comfortable with any number. And that is why I make the point that it is also important to consider that continuing with both analog and digital, given the costs and the very high cost that government simply doesn't have resources to continue funding, leaves us in a very, very difficult position wherein we have to balance this. And that is why the commitment is even beyond this deadline. The installations will continue of those set-top boxes so that we can continue trying to reach those registered households. So whether the number is 380 of households who are yet to have the set boxes installed, or it's 10 or 15, the reality is we've got a responsibility to enhance universal access, and we have to make efforts, which is what we are currently doing, to get those set-top boxes installed so that we meet those number of registered beneficiaries.
Okay, what's the reason behind failure to meet the deadline in terms of ensuring that all households, the indigent households that have registered, actually do have the set-top boxes, whether it is, if we speak about the deadlines that came after 2014, or every other deadline, including the one from December that was extended to March?
So historically, this project has not moved as it should have moved, and that's one thing that I have acknowledged since coming into this role, and even my predecessors have acknowledged and taken efforts to make interventions that will help with, one, getting the procurement of the set-top boxes, which in some instances have taken longer than anticipated, and the process of installations, wherein also the capacity of installers, and which is why, again, in this administration, this period, we've increased the number of installers so that we can, one, fasten delivery and broaden the number of those households that we are able to reach. And cumulatively over a period of time, all these events that have led to a series of the deadlines either being extended because there was a recognition between their broadcasters themselves and also from the department side that not everything has unfolded as envisioned, and that has justified the extensions. And these extensions, Alden, have been done primarily for the purposes of ensuring that there won't be unfair prejudice on the ordinary South Africans who rely on analog for enjoying television services. But everything comes with a cost. And it has now gotten to a stage wherein the reality is the cost is unaffordable. So the intention is there. The intention is to ensure that there is no exclusion, right? But that has to be juxtaposed with, can at this stage we afford to do that? And the hard reality and the sad reality is that the fiscus is depleted to continue funding this. And I want to make the point. So it is not, it has been argued elsewhere, that we are using the lack of resources or funding to justify an inability to fulfill an obligation that government has towards making sure that people have universal access. But these are the difficult choices that comes with functioning with limited resources and having to juggle all these variables.
Yeah, and with that as well, of course, comes the conversation about the digital divide in the country and how that inequality gap seems to be widening. You wrote a column recently in the Sunday Times where you spoke about the equity equivalence program and that you'll be issuing a policy directive with regards to that. Tell us what the idea behind that is, and how does that link to the conversation around a Starlink setting up in the country, even though they don't meet that 30% localized part of if they were to move into the country at 30% locally owned of the business.
Yeah, so the whole intention of the policy directive is to seek clarity on the aspect of the applicability of equity equivalent programs in the ICT sector. You would know that in other sectors, particularly the automobile sector, equity equivalent programs are applicable, which have helped attract a lot of multinational and international investment in that sector. And what I'm seeking to establish with the policy directive, which will be the basis of public comments, and those comments will then guide the actual final decision about it, is one, why has equity equivalent programs not been applicable in the ICT sector, and can we get public comments in terms of what the position should be in the sector? And that purpose is we are looking to close the digital divide, right? And part of doing that digital divide is what are the sources of potential investments in this sector that can help enhance internet, that can help enhance access to the internet in South Africa? We currently have over 23 million South Africans who don't have access to the internet. And my obsession as the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies is to seek avenues of enhancing that access, whether that is going to be through fiber, whether that is going to be through broadband, or whether it's going to be through low orbit satellites. The reality, Aldrin, is if you look at developments world over in terms of efforts to close the digital divide, the conversation about low Earth orbit satellites is a dominant conversation. And let's also be clear, is that these efforts are not about one specific company. They are about how do we maximize efforts for access to the internet by attracting the investments that will help us close that digital divide.
Okay. Have you had this conversation with the Starlink representatives at all? And have you spoken to the Department of Trade and Industry?
No. So the process in terms of license applications, that's the responsibility. Individual license applications are the responsibility of the regulator, this being ICASA, which does the assessment. It would be, it's not a terrain that as a minister I want to be licensed with specific companies and doing lobbying on that end.
Okay. And you haven't spoken to the Department of Trade and Industry on that, because I understand that the equity equivalence program falls under that department.
So we've had informal conversations broadly about empowerment programs with my counterpart, Minister Pakstawu. But I mean the thing about the efforts that we are making through the policy directive, Aldrin, is to seek that clarity, because then the Department of Trade and Industry does the enforcement and setting of the standards in terms of the empowerment codes that are then applicable broadly as part of South Africa's empowerment laws.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. Solly Malatsi is the Minister for Communications and Digital Technologies. That is on the digital transition that